I would love to introduce to our one listener who's out there a very special person in my life. His name is Todd Shively. He is the managing broker of Coldwell banker Bain in Capitol Hill. But before he was a big shot, he was a friend of mine and has been a trusted confidant of mine for years. Every time Spade and Archer has tried to disrupt our industry, we've gone to Todd and sat down and bought him lunch just to hear what his insights and thoughts are, because he's literally like the smartest guy I know in real estate and has made my life and my business better on a regular basis. So if you would please welcome to the show, Todd Shively.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Todd, we've talked a lot today about COVID-19 and what's going on in the real estate industry, and it's just been kind of craziness, but we're just going to take a break from COVID-19 for just a minute. I would love to hear, like, nobody ever goes to school and like majors in real estate. So how did you get here? Like, where did you start off and what was your path of travel?
Yeah, everything else was just an interruption, basically, on my path to real estate. So oddly enough, from the time I was in elementary school, like from the very beginning, I had my eyes on a career in real estate. Not just a passion for architecture and a passion for people and a passion for the sales experience, but really I just loved the whole thing. So when I was in kindergarten, I read the very first book I even remember reading was the story of these two people who had a house to sell, and they put it on the market, and it was this little gray house, and they had some people come by and they said, "Oh, we really like it, but we don't care for the color." And so they painted it red. And then some new people came by, of course. I don't know what happened to the first buyers, but the new people came by and they said, "Hey, this is a really great house, but it needs a fence." And so they put in a fence, and then, off go those buyers, of course, after they give you the good advice. And then the third party comes along and they say, "It's a really lovely house, but it needs some flowers." So the sellers stand back and they look at their house and they go, "You know what? This is going to work for us." And they don't sell their house at all. I remember
love
that story.
There was a children's book called My First Sale Fail.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, 100%, actually. And that might be, I should look it up. Maybe that's the name. I've been trying to find it. Anyway, so I remember that, and I just remember being fascinated by that whole process, and I had a great uncle who was a real estate broker in another town in central Idaho, Twin Falls, and he had his own brokerage, and I always was just so fascinated by him and the whole aura and the presence and the sort of career of it. And later days of my elementary years, they were building houses they were converting farmland to neighborhoods in the area where I grew up. And I would tour through those houses. And at that stage of the game in southern Idaho, you could have an open house by just leaving the door unlocked with new construction. And so on Sundays, I would go and just walk through these houses and climb through the construction. I was just fascinated by the whole thing. So for all those years, I kept my eye on it. And then I job shadowed with a real estate broker in junior high on career day. Just loved it. Was fascinated by all of it. And then went to school, and then at Pacific Lutheran Tacoma, and then worked at Group Health as a project manager. I worked at several positions for a couple of years there, but lastly as a project manager in marketing communication. So that really lined up with my desires. I loved that company. I loved working there. And then one day I just kind of woke up and went, what happened to real estate and that whole thing? And 6 weeks later, I was a real estate broker, out of money, out of ideas, didn't know what I was doing, but out of a job and out of money, but full of ideas, I should say. So
that's awesome.
Here we are.
Thank you.
And that was 18 years ago.
This industry is lucky to have you.
Thank you, sir.
So normally during this interview process, we would say, like, so what keeps you up at night? And we are all probably the most aligned our country has ever been as to what keeps us up at night. So we're just going to ask that COVID-19 question. What are you doing to support your people? What are they looking for from you? How are you helping? Like, what's your plan of action right now?
Well, as much as primarily focus is around crystal clear communication, providing touchstones for the brokers so that they have a sense of continuity. So we do a lot of meetings. We do our meetings, our broadcast, and I ask everybody to get on the video. We do our regular meetings at our regular times. We follow a fairly consistent agenda. We have happy hours 3 times a week. We were doing them every day. Now we're doing them 3 times a week as people begin to sort of fall into the rhythm of things. We have a couple of additional meetings in the mornings just to be available if they're working from home and they want to drop in. We're helping people clean up their database, make sure we're getting folks who are not regularly in touch with their clients, trying to help them use this time. The firm has worked very hard to help people try to steer towards resources for whether it's financial resources or keeping themselves occupied and engaged with ways to grow their business in a time when other people could be shrinking away from it. And also creating clear direction for our clients in terms of understanding the risks of buying or selling a house during a pandemic, which is not something we've had to explain before, and helping them sort of take responsibility for the decisions that they make when they want to go out or into the marketplace or have people come into their home through the marketplace. So lots of communication, lots of clarity. You know, like when important communications go out, they come out as a memo with a headline and a date and the bullet points. And it's like not casual. It's really crystal clear. So you can go back and see really plainly the evolution of that. And then this week, you know, it's interesting. I'd been broadcasting our meetings the last few weeks from home, from a specific room with a specific backdrop, and trying to be very like from the bunker, you know, about here we are in the front lines of this thing. And this week I moved back to the office. The office is closed, but I went back to the office for that 1 hour on Tuesday morning to sort of say, the critical office infrastructure is still operating. We're here to do the things you need to do. You can set an appointment and come in and pick up something and then leave. But all of the work can still get done to the degree that you feel like you can safely do so.
Immediate follow-up to that is just because we can relate to so much with Spade and Archer and home staging. We're not agents, but we're still in the same industry, and we're still dealing with the same ethical, moral, public health, financial questions and concerns. And we have the facts and we have the regulations, and then a whole lot of gray area. And we've been navigating that just from how we're staying open, the activities we're doing, and how we're messaging. How do you help your agents navigate all of that gray area? Do you have guiding principles that you keep, or is this like you're figuring it out on the fly? Like, how have you been managing that with, I'm sure your people come to you with so many gray area questions.
Yeah. And they come with a lot of frustrations about the people who are pushing into the gray, if you will. I think the general consensus among the folks, at least in my branch, where it was a lockdown's appropriate. A lockdown is for the health of all people, and let's just get on board with the rules. So there was a quick scramble in the last couple of days. The stay home, stay healthy order came out on a Monday, and by Wednesday night at midnight, everyone was supposed to be home. And so we basically, you know, got those memos out. Here's what we expect. Here's the guidelines. Stay home, stay healthy. And for 2 days, we did that. And then we woke up on a Saturday, and for us, the blue, there was a memo from the governor that said, yes, still that, but also some other things, you know. And then it was this wild scramble to figure out where we fit into that, where our industry partners fit into that, how the buyers and sellers were going to sort of reopen into that for those that wanted to do it. So our basic philosophy is to be as transparent and conservative in terms of putting what we consider our priorities, which would be the physical safety of each other and the community first. So we are not running out into the gray to say, yeah, this is business as usual. Let's get straight in. Let's just find a way to bend all the rules as much as we can. Like, it's just not really our model to do that. So most of our folks are still staying home. Some of our folks haven't left their house in 6 or 7 weeks. That's the one end of the spectrum. And then we have a handful. We've got 65 licensees in the office that are selling right now. And we've got probably 10% that haven't left their house at all. And we've got about 10% that are out multiple days a week, carefully showing houses. They've got their kits in the car, and they've got their hand sanitizer and their gloves and their wipes, and they're doing all the things as rigidly as they can. And what we're asking our sellers to do, they get to decide whether they want to or not, is to have all buyers that come through fill out a health questionnaire, a travel questionnaire. Where have you been? Who have you been around? How are you feeling today before they cross the threshold? You know, really trying to create enough of a a sense of structure that people can feel as safe as they can coming into the house. Tough for sellers and buyers, particularly with something that doesn't necessarily manifest with symptoms until you've already been spreading it around. So
2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you that a message other than safety first doesn't make sense. And it sounds like the protocols that you've described are going to be around for a while. Justin and I were just talking about that earlier today. This isn't something like shelter in place is going to get lifted and all of these protocols are going to go out the window. This is the new normal.
Yeah. And it's I think everyone's behavior is going to be affected for a long time for this. And, I miss the hugs the most. I hope that the handshakes come back last, whatever, but I hope we get to hugging. I do not need to go back to that elbow bump thing one bit at all. That that was the most awkward thing.
Yeah.
I'm good with just a friendly wave, but for the folks that I know, I really miss having that physical contact, but I think we'll see a slide away from that. And I think that we'll be more conscientious in a lot of ways when we get done with this in terms of how we allow the public into our spaces and engage in public space, I think.
Yeah. We're operating in 3 states, in California, Oregon, and Washington. I think you guys are Oregon and Washington, right?
Yeah, Coldwell Banker, of course, internationally,
everywhere.
But Coldwell Banker Bain, as in the Bain brand, is Bend, Oregon to Bellingham. There's 32 offices. We
felt like Oregon, from our point of view, handled the stay-at-home order really well. They didn't say who was essential and who wasn't essential. They put a type form on their website that said, answer these questions, we'll tell you if you should be operating or not. And you answer those questions, then it tells you if you should be operating or not. Washington came out and they were like, you are not essential, stay home, real estate. And then they were like, you're halfway essential, 2 days later. And then 36 hours later, you have to operate. And we're having these gigantic moral dilemmas because everybody had resolved themselves to, we are not essential. Our job is to stay at home and be safe. And then all of a sudden they were told you're supposed to work. And it was really polarized. Did you guys have just gigantic amounts of discussions of what you should and should not be doing? Were people just pissed off, or how did that roll out for you?
Yeah, kind of all of that. That was definitely it was a complicated time because there's the Northwest MLS, which is the body that the sort of central database that most of the realtors or real estate brokers, I should say, in Washington are a member of. That's a private organization that people pay dues into, and then they set sort of the rules based on what that organizational standard will be. Then there's the Washington Realtors and Seattle King County Realtors, sort of with their own overlay and interpretation of those orders. And then there's the governor's intention. And, Washington Realtors and the Northwest MLS have worked very closely on this. I should mention that I am a director on the board for Washington Realtors and Seattle King County Realtors, but have no direct engagement. That all happens through our legislative arm, where those conversations are happening directly between Washington Realtors, Northwest MLS, and the governor's office, who did assign a liaison to real estate to say, okay, let's try to navigate this. My understanding of the intention of Washington Realtors when they were speaking to the governor's office before and right after the stay home, stay healthy order was, look, there are somewhere between 15 and 17,000 pending transactions in the state of Washington. And there are certain things that have to happen in order for us to close within a generally understood, the generally understood parameters of this process. People need to be able to do a walkthrough, make sure inspections, the inspection items are repaired. Maybe they are just got into contract and need to actually have an inspection. If we get to the end of the transaction, we're ready to close and they can't get their furniture moved out, where does that leave us? So the good fight was fought, I think, to say, with a pending sale, we should probably try to, the expectation been, we're just gonna go on a sort of slow curve until we sort of flatten as everything gets closed. Let's get all the stuff done and then we'll just kind of be set. And when the order came out, it looked a little bit different in that it included language saying that you would still be able to physically go to a house as long as you followed the basic criteria, 2 people at a time, stay at least 6 feet away, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that language was open enough that it could be interpreted to say, go back and show houses again. And so you saw the spectrum of folks who were like, this is terrible. This goes against the idea of keeping the community safe. This is a health hazard. And the other folks saying, great news, we are back open for business. Let's start selling houses again. And there was a lot of tension between those parties. And of course, that's a statewide thing. So you think about the personality differences in King County, Snohomish, Whatcom, or, you know, east of the mountains, and how differently people vote around social issues, presidential elections, how they feel about states' rights, all of those things wrapped into one. And they're trying to address this thing for millions of people. Complicated stuff. And the feelings range a lot. And you sort of just have to say, let's do everything we can within the smallest box possible to facilitate for the needs of the greater good.
Great. Thank you.
So.
It is definitely challenging out there for sure. So we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to play a game that we like to call "What the Fuck."
What the fun? What the fun
yeah,
is that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and you know, I know that this COVID thing is like, it's all we can talk about right now, but I feel like every once in a while just need a little bit of a break to like get away from it. So we're going to talk more about like stuff that you've seen out there that makes you just want to say, "What the fuck?" Okay. So to transition, what has been the thing during the COVID response that somebody has come to you with and they said, this is what I want to do, and it made you just say, what the fuck? Like, what's been that thing so far?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would call it an absolute what the fuck, but we've had people who, there's no open houses allowed. The open houses were the first thing to go. Like the Northwest MLS they just turned off the option, which is pretty impressive actually, because flip a switch and then you can't schedule them, right? They just don't show up anywhere. So even if you were to hold an open house, it would literally be anybody that happened to drive past the house. So you had to sign out in front, which we quickly said would also not work. But as a workaround, what people have been trying to do is to say, no open houses, but I will be there from 1 p.m. until 4 p.m. for walk-in appointments, right? So you can stop by the house, I'll be there, and then you can come in. And it's like, it looks like a duck, and it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck. It looks an awful lot like an open house with a turnstile. Like,
That's an open house, yeah.
You know, and I'm like, well, if you're going to technically be scheduling an appointment, like call a real estate broker, call a realtor, and have them show you the house, because I can't represent. So just get somebody else to come and show it to you at any time you want. All showings right now have to be scheduled. That's the law. They have to be scheduled in advance, and they have to be 2 people, and you have to stay 6 feet apart, and blah, blah, blah. So like the idea that you're just going to say, I'm just going to conveniently be here with the door open, try to stay far away, and moderating that, having people standing out in a line, like it really to me just flies in the face of everything we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah. I read a story on Facebook. They were talking about how the MLS, I don't know which MLS this was, but it wasn't MLS. They were trying to figure out how key exchanges would happen, because it requires more than 2 people to be together to do a key exchange. And the MLS's written response back to the agent was, well, if you happen to just be out for a walk at the time that the key exchange is supposed to happen, and you just happen to be there, and you have that, and I was like, you actually wrote that down? What the fuck?
I had this, somebody was like, well, here's the best solution. This is really early on when we weren't sure how movement was even going to look, and there was somehow the controls were going to be so strict that it was going to be like, you must go straight from your house to the grocery store and back again. I'm like, well, go to the grocery store, find the shelf where the toilet paper is supposed to be, leave the key on the shelf, and then the other broker would come along behind and like take the key off the shelf. It would be really easy to find because there would be no toilet paper and there's plenty of room to put the keys there. So
hysterical.
Yeah, that was, people were coming up with those solutions. But that was an actual question when it was on full lockdown. You know, a seller could go to their own home and leave a key somewhere, and a buyer could go, but that's not the way that we handle these things generally. And there's nobody there to answer questions, and the parties don't generally come into contact with each other, and they weren't supposed to. And yeah, it was just the facilitation of those things is really what we were trying to accomplish with, getting some of this loosened up a little bit, and it's just kind of gotten bigger than expected. But the market remains absolutely ridiculously robust for all of that.
Oh yeah, we've got, of our guaranteed projects, I think we have something like 50 of them, and all but 2 are pending right now. I mean, it's just going. It's just going.
Go. Yeah.
So
Good for you.
as a real estate agent, real estate agents are and you sold real estate forever and ever and ever. Now you're managing real estate agents, clients, and they ask you to do all kinds of things for you, from, take a dog out for a walk to come and vacuum my floor or whatever. What is the thing that a client asked you to do for them that you were like, what the fuck?
Yeah. One of those involved an awful lot of work around the house. And this is one of the challenges when you do real estate with friends and you don't really know how to say no. And they're always like, well, am I throwing you a bone to have you represent my house? I'm like, no, you're not. I'm actually a really successful real estate broker and I do super great work. And I've got a whole no, but sure. Okay. And not being able to say no, and literally at the house, moving furniture, painting things. There's a part of it that's just providing service. There's another thing to spend a week at someone's house actually doing the work that a professional should be doing, and I'm highly incompetent at doing anyway. You do not want me painting your house, by the way. Yeah. I would say that it wasn't outrageous, but it was just really inappropriate. This is definitely something you should be paying a professional to do, and I am there with the roller, with the paint, doing all the work for days at a time, just because I couldn't figure out how to say no.
Yeah, and people are not afraid to ask, right? They're like, "What's the hurt in asking?" Because the worst thing you can say is no. So
right, the hurt is not in the ask. The hurt is not knowing how to say no.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so what was the most what the fuck offer you ever got? When somebody's buying a house, you got an offer or a request from another agent during that transaction, and you were like, no.
Yeah, well, can I turn that around slightly to what the most fucked up thing I had to do to try to put a deal together was?
Yes,
please. That's a good one.
Which is really this. It's actually, it turns out at the end of it's a very, very sweet story. But so I was helping these buyers in a multiple offer situation, and the seller, great guy, good personality, fairly well known local DJ actually. We were presenting the offers in person. The offer presentation was, of all places, coincidentally, in my office, because it was that person's listing broker was a broker in our office. So we had submitted the offer. It was a very, very good offer. And there was another offer from a neighbor a couple doors down that they were also very tempted to take. And so ours was, they were basically in line with each other. And, I'm in the office and I'm kind of in and out of the conference room trying to maneuver this thing together, but we can't seem to find terms that are enough to push it over the limit. So the seller looks across the table from me, and again, I'm here representing the buyers, and I'm really I've given everything I can in terms of what I think would be a reasonable thing that we could offer. And he finally looks at me and says, okay, here's the thing. We'll take your client's offer, but you have to get up on this table and dance.
What?
And I got up, stepped on the chair in the middle of a glass conference room in my office with the seller and the wife and the broker, and danced on the table. Now, I think he thought I was going to sort of dance as if I was in a club, and I basically did some sort of weird modified tap routine, right? And he was like, okay.
That was going to be my follow-up. What song did you play in your head while you were dancing?
Hello, my honey. Hello, my darling. I don't know where my head was. It did not go to any.
They wanted Chippendales, and you gave them Shirley Temple. That's so awesome.
That's exactly right. So I don't think it was quite as satisfying as he'd hoped, but it did get the deal put together, which was really lovely. But the interesting, funny thing about that, the interesting part of that story is some other clients of mine knew about that story. And so when I sold their house several years later, we were reviewing offers. We got through the offers and we had picked the winning offer. And I'm like, well, it looks like we're all done. I'm sitting at the conference room table, same conference room, same office. And they're like, awesome. And they got up on their chairs, got onto the table and danced to sort of return the favor. And they brought a bunch of $100 bills, and they just made it rain $100 bills and danced for me, because they wanted to take on that moment and sort of reclaim that for me, which is super, super sweet.
I love that they did the dancing and the making it rain at the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
time.
They did all the things, you know.
I want to
They
go to
were
that
like,
strip club, dude, where the strippers just throw money at me the whole time.
throw money back at you. Yeah, the longer you sit there, the more they put it right in front of you there. Yeah.
The sad part is that people throw money at me to put my clothes back on. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, enough.
Not as
enough.
sexy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a living.
So we have often, one of the things that we talk about at Spade and Archer all the time is the crazy ass shit that we find in people's houses. Like it's so amazing what people will leave out or leave behind when they know that other service providers are coming into their home. So what is the most what the fuck thing that you have found like in a house as you're walking through?
You know, it's funny because a lot of times the things that you know, the things you would expect, you know, like the unmentionables that get left next to the bed, or, you know, something, you know, the racy lingerie or whatever, you know, the little things that are just like people still living in the house and they're living their life and they kind of just forget to do something. And you see those kind of things all the time, you know, or like slightly embarrassing, or somebody leaves like a, back in the days of DVDs, somebody would leave a DVD out on the coffee table that was probably not for general, you know, consumption. But the weirdest thing, like, that just happens because people are living their lives and they're not thinking it through. They're, you know, but the weirdest thing, like, we went into a house and it was this sort of older home, and upstairs in the, like a sort of a converted attic space that had like really just disgusting carpet. And then there was like a rope tied to a big bolt on the ceiling that was, you know, like, and it wasn't really clear what the utility could have possibly been. And it was kind of frayed at the end, and it very much looked like somebody might've been tied to it for a period of time. It was just like, this is really, really mysterious. And it was really creepy. And it's like, that's not just something that you couldn't have dealt with. Like you didn't forget that. You didn't put that up this morning and forget it when you went to, you know, take a phone call. Like,
that was
you intentionally left that behind, and nobody, so along the line said we should take that out before we put your house in the market. That's weird.
We along those lines, I was walking through a house once, and one of the bedrooms had a deadbolt on it, but the deadbolt was from the hallway.
Yeah.
And so somebody was put into that room, and the deadbolt was then thrown behind them. And I'm like, what is going on here? What is happening?
Yeah.
And the other super duper creepy thing that we saw is that once up in an attic, you know, the unfinished attic, and it's just like, you know, the beams and all that, was a children's swing that had been like, not a sling, not a sex thing or anything, just like a little
very sad
swing.
Little like indoor swing.
Yeah, and it was like, oh, so creepy. Like, where's the Ouija board? Like this, like, you know, this child in here.
And that sort of like discordant ring around the rosy, like like in the background. Yeah.
Okay. So Todd Shively, you have been such a great supporter of Spade and Archer over the years. I really appreciate you. You have been promoted and brought up through the ranks at Coldwell Banker Bain, because clearly you are such a flipping superstar, and we are so happy to have you on our team. We're so happy to have an affinity program with Coldwell Banker Bain, and much of that is due to your effort, and we so appreciate you being a part of our lives.
Well, it's my pleasure. I am just the product of the mentorship I've received through this company, and it's so exciting to continue to be in a position of leadership now, and able to continue influencing folks with the great Bain way.
So as we go on, can we have you back on Behind the Yard Sign in the future?
Sure. Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll start journaling so that I can keep track of all the little things, because it's like any given day, I feel like we've got stories.
Your what the fuck journal.
Yeah, my what the fuck journal.
Here's what happened today.
It's a good reason to get that started, you know?
If anybody else wants to be a guest on Behind the Yard Sign, and you already have your what the fuck journal put together, reach out to us. You can find us at spade-archer.com. We'd love to talk to you. Thanks so much for your time, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks for your time, you guys.